Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Spotlight On of the year. I'll be your host today of today's panel. Today we're going to be focusing on AI in schools and trusts. So I've got three other panelists, all varied experience and varied expertise in the area. So really looking forward to it. But before we do get into that, just a little bit of housekeeping. So depending on what platform you're on, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, we will be getting through your comments throughout the session. This is an interactive session. We've not come prepared with loads of questions for each other. It is for your benefit and hopefully answer some questions, challenges, opportunities that you've got going in your school, trust, or even organisation. So we can make them appear like this up on screen. So we've already got a comment. Thank you, Lucy. Looking forward to another inspiring Spotlight On. Always really insightful. So thank you very much for that, Lucy. My name's Matt anyway. I'm founder of Matter, which is a free-to-join association for current and aspiring trust leaders. We currently have membership from over 500 trusts. So a real good cross-section of trust size, location in the country, and that's why we have these sessions, because everyone seems to have a very different experience with AI at the moment. So there is a QR code in your top right corner. You can scan that, join as a member for completely free. Without further ado, I will introduce the first panelist. So I'm going to start with Dan. So Dan is a member on our advisory board. But I'll let you introduce yourself for the rest of everything, Dan. So go ahead.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, my name's Dan. I'm the founder of the AI Educator, and the author of the AI Classroom, the ultimate guide to artificial intelligence and education. So, yeah, spend a lot of my time traveling around, working with schools, universities, colleges, businesses, and helping them integrate artificial intelligence and strategizing for the future of this wild world that we're now entering with artificial intelligence. It's exciting, and we've got a lot of work to do as educators.
Mm. Yeah, amazing. And from a school background, worked in a trust as well, didn't you, Dan? So
yes, I was a teacher, worked in high school in the northeast of England, then was on the senior leadership team, and then moved into further education and worked with a group of colleges in the northeast of England around digital strategy. Brilliant. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, great. Thanks, Dan. And next up, Lewis. Welcome, Lewis.
Hey, nice to see you guys. How you doing?
Yeah, all good. All good, thank you. Yeah, give us a bit of an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, of course. So Lewis Griffiths here from Mega Nexus. We're a software as a solution for a social good organization. The reason we're part of this is utilizing our new product, Genie, which is generative AI for education. So maybe we'll talk about how that's been utilized so far and where we're kind of heading to the educational spectra. But yeah, really glad to be here. Bit of a educational background for myself, governor for a school, do understand AI is the word of fear at the moment, but yeah, really good chance to kind of discuss that in a bit more depth and talk about the integrity of the human and the AI loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we'll get on to some questions around that as well. Thank you, by the way. I did display a comment from Ian, so welcome to your first Spotlight, Ian. And last but not least, maybe a familiar face, some has joined on a few Spotlights in the past. Hi, Mark, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Thanks very much for having me.
No problem. Wellbe, not traditionally always been AI, but you've got something that you've just launched as well.
Yeah, so I'm Mark Solomons, founder of Wellbe. We are the staff wellbeing partner for Matter and really focus on helping schools and trust to improve wellbeing. So once we have a survey, we don't like to think of ourselves as a survey company because it's always what happens afterwards that makes the difference. So we very much focus on those actions. Quick plug I will do though, just say it came out yesterday, what makes teachers unhappy. So very much not AI this, but obviously that's our expertise. And what we've done is try to bring AI into how can we support staff and leaders in schools and trusts using AI. So we launched the world's first AI staff wellbeing assistant, so people can actually ask questions doesn't search Google, it searches our own wellbeing toolkit, 150 plus resources, and the book, and really provides people with a wide range of answers using generative AI. We also use AI in our own kind of business in terms of video production and avatars, in terms of summarizing results and other kind of methodologies. Really looking forward to talking about how schools might benefit and overcome some of the fears which clearly are there.
Yeah, brilliant. Really good to hear. Let's get started then. For any latecomers, again, I can see that the comment section's getting comments anyway, but get your questions in. This is an interactive session, so anything around concerns or opportunities or applications that you've had in your school, trust, college, whatever it may be, get them in the comment section, then we can feedback as well. But just to get us started and set the scene a little bit, Dan, I'll come to you. Where are we at the moment in comparison to maybe where we were even 3 months ago?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it's moving really, really fast. But I think when adoption moves fast, this a gulf happens. So I think we've still got a lot of schools who still are just kind of having those conversations around it. Maybe a few kind of renegade teachers exploring AI and showing them off to their colleagues. And then at the other end, which is I think is the end I see, because if somebody's getting me into their school, the chances are they're at the other end where they're really flying with it. And so I get to see a lot of the schools around the world who are really, really pushing the envelope with artificial intelligence. They're ambitious. They want to be out ahead. They want to create a new system, some of them with AI and the potential that AI has. So I think as the months go on, we see more and more of a spectrum, really, rather than the whole education system moving along at the same time, and for understandable reasons. I mean, some schools are just worried about getting their students back in the classroom because of everything that's going on with these rack cement blocks and the teacher retention crisis and so much going on. Like something like AI, which seems quite fringe to some people, but might not stay fringe for all long, is something that is just not on the priority list at the moment. So I think we're in a bit of a strange place, and I think just like companies who are embracing AI at the moment, the schools who are embracing AI are gonna get a lot from it and fast. So as part of my mission, as part of what I do, is trying to encourage schools to explore these technologies, even if it's just implementing one or two things that will help save them a bit of time. You don't necessarily have to change the whole education system because of AI, but just helping with staff workload. Start there. That's where there's a major issue, and there's some schools really doing that and pushing ahead with that. So yeah, I'm not sure I've answered your question, but that's kind of what I'm seeing out there at the moment.
No, setting the scene brilliantly there. You mentioned people there as well, and teacher retention. I'm going to bring on Mark on that point because that's more your side of things, Mark, isn't it? Any comments on that as well and what you're seeing?
Well, I think Dan answered a lot of questions well in terms of a range from people fearing it to encouraging curiosity and exploring it, and I think there probably are more on the kind of hiding from it than perhaps are out there taking it on. And we're certainly seeing that with a toolkit, and people using AI, that perhaps it's not being used quite as much as I thought it might be, although some people are adopting it really significantly in terms of, we've seen people have half-hour conversations with it and kind of treat it like a human and actually build a whole strategy by having this conversation. And I think for those people perhaps, and maybe, if you look at some of the stats, maybe for men, something like using AI for that, where perhaps they don't want to go to counselling and they don't want to talk, does give them an avenue. Now, it's never going to be a replacement for proper therapy or counselling or real mental health issues, but for those people who've got, some concerns or anxiety, we're seeing that as a potential big use. In terms of building it into the culture, though, the one thing it's not going to do really is, I guess, in the short term, certainly, but probably not in the longer term, is replace the need for really good leadership. Now, what it can do, coming back to Dan's point, is help create capacity so that more people can spend time being a leader rather than kind of doing the admin to support in the classroom. So I think for me, that's where I'd see it, and I'd really, encourage people out there to explore and try and take some small steps with those things, particularly around workload reduction, because it's probably an easier and quick win and less fearful.
Yeah, definitely. We hear a lot about that on obviously AI being a bit of a replacement side of things. So it's interesting to hear that, as you say, it cannot replace good leadership.
I heard a really great quote that said, AI won't replace people, but eventually people who can use AI will replace people that can't. And I thought that was a really, a quote from one of my mentors in the entrepreneurial world, Nigel Bottle. And I thought, that's a really good way of thinking about it, because there will be some jobs potentially that are very robotic where it might do, but where it requires thought and intelligence, I don't think AI, despite having the word intelligence in it, will replace people. But clearly people can use it to be more productive, to be more effective, to get more done, are going to have a competitive advantage over people that don't.
I say, Matt, can I jump in on that? Sorry, Lewis. But
absolutely.
There's a lot more evidence coming out for that at the moment in terms of actual human AI collaboration can do a lot more than just AI or just the human. I don't know if you listen to Mustafa Suleyman, who's the co-founder of DeepMind, was on Stephen Bartlett's podcast recently, and he talked about a lot of people, especially in the AI circles, like to talk about. It's about 10 years ago, Google produced an AI called actually I forgot the name of it now, but what it does is it plays Go. There's a game called Go, which is a really complex strategic game, and they built an AI to beat the world champion of Go. A lot of people use that example to say how powerful AI is, but what they don't realize, and Mustafa Suleyman shared because he helped build the AI, is that actually since then they found an even better solution to beat the AI that beat the Go champion, and that is a human with the AI is better than just the AI at Go. So we're seeing a lot more evidence coming out that actually the collaboration of human and AI it can do so much more than either on their own.
Interesting. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for coming in there, Dan. Lewis, we have a lot of comments. I don't know whether you guys can see that, but already a really active chat. Lewis, because you are on this side of things, I'm actually going to use you straight away to answer. Sorry, not that question. Here we go. By the way, thank you everyone for your comments and questions. Keep them coming. Rania, are we to see AI soon structured into curriculum? You can also obviously tie this into your tool anyway, but just a little bit around what you're hearing out there would be great.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept. I think that I think it definitely can be structured into curriculum. I think we're trying to do that here at an organization. So what we're trying to do is, it's very much, you just touched upon it, boys, where it's freeing up the teachers as much as possible. And like what we've seen for the past 2-3, and maybe it's been apparent in the past 2-3 years because, the news have woken up and actually listened to it, but the burnout of teachers, and the burnout of teachers and how much workload there is, and how can we aid that, and how can we kind of suppress that, and how can we alleviate teachers and stuff. So that's where we come in, and we've developed something called Genie, which is generative AI for education. That's actually utilizing areas of curriculum. We're able to pull through curriculum to create course content for framework for teaching, for doing the 60 to 80% worth of course creation. Now, it's integral within that we still need the teacher, because the teacher's a delivery model. Teachers can do so much more than AI ever will. And I think that's where we're kind of at with AI, where it's got to be, it can create content, it can create the framework, and create the actual lesson planning, but the delivery and, the one-to-one relationship, the mentoring, those elements you can't teach, unfortunately, or at least in my eyes, you definitely can't. And that's why it's so integral to have the teachers in the workforce. So for me, I think AI in curriculum is definitely there. I think that we have to use it sparsely, and I think it needs to be vetted. I think we need to make sure that if we are using the curriculum, it needs to be read over. We don't want to just run with it, but I think that is definitely a position that we're pushing for as an organization. Just because we've built that, we've built a guy, like a helping hand, a genius, as someone by your side. But for it to be used, I think it's definitely there.
And Yeah, great. Obviously, great points there. So thank you, Lewis. And what are we hearing out there in terms of academies, schools, trusts actually actively adopting it? So I was speaking to a trust leader a couple of months ago who said, we're being asked it at job interviews of new teachers for the next academic year, whether we're open to them using it, because they don't want to feel like they're cheating the job, but also they've just come out of uni, trying to utilize it as much as they can. So has anyone got any kind of feedback or advice on that, on how often it's being used, I guess?
Yeah, I'll jump. Go on, Dan, you first. Go on.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Lewis. Yeah. I don't think. I think you've kind of touched upon some of that. And I don't think a lot of teachers fully admit to using it. It's interesting because when I'm in a school and I say, right, put your hand up who's using ChatGPT or who's used it once, most people put their hand up. Still a few who've never have. Then I say, right, keep your hand up if you're using it regularly. Nearly every hand goes down apart from literally one or two within an audience of about 200 people. And I thought, and I think I'm right to a certain extent. The disparity there is because people aren't using it in a way to get to make it an impact. And I see that as one of the things I do when I go to schools. I help them use these so that they can make an impact. But then I remember I was in a school recently, and one of the head teachers said that they knew that more people were using it than that, and that they think that a bit like students, how students won't admit to it. Like someone was telling me recently, every student they talk to in their school knows somebody who's using it, but it's never them. It's always somebody they know. And I think it's a bit like that with teachers at the minute, because it's kind of like they don't want people to know that they're using it to get the work done, because it's seen as a bit like cheating. And I think we need to break down those walls. And I work with leadership teams in schools to try and get them. And one of the things I say is admit to your students that you're using it. Tell them you're using it, and then go on that journey with your students. But I think maybe the step before that is the leadership saying to their teachers, "We're using it, and let's do this. Let's go on this journey together." So I think a lot of people are using it. I think a lot of individuals are using it. But I think we need to do more from a leadership level to encourage experimentation with these tools, because whether we like it or not, industry is going to be using it. What are we preparing our students for when they leave? And like you say, students coming into the profession as well will want to use it, because it'll just become very much the norm, and it pretty much has overnight. It's become the norm. If you can, and I think I was having this conversation with someone earlier on, and I think we'll get to a point where nobody will really care if it's AI generated, as long as it can have an impact. I think that's what's going to be the valuable thing. So I think we've still got a lot of work to do, but I think more people are using it than we realize.
Great. Kirsty, thank you for your question there. Really important, because this has been flagged God knows how many times now on what information you should put into a system, which ones are maybe secure. I'm going to come to Mark, just because you have made something that does store potentially sensitive information. Have you got any feedback on Kirsty's question there, Mark?
So I guess I can share what we do. So we can see we can see answers, should I say, but we never link them to a specific individual. So they come into one thing, but they're stored separately, and we never kind of look at those. So effectively, and the reason why we look at the information is because we want to make sure that the AI is kind of performing, and whilst we've got the obviously the AI is learning itself, we want to make sure the learning, because you can train the AI, you can train it on tone of voice, you can train it on how it makes the answers, so the formatting of the answers by using prompts and things like that. So we're quite keen, because we want to give the best possible service. But just to rest assured, if somebody put something in around, they were talking about, worried about something specific, or they shared something confidential or private, and it's really interesting you can actually put into our AI, is this confidential? And the AI will tell you yes, and it will tell you the only time. So could we go and find out who did something by going in about yes? And that's just a legal requirement, because I guess if somebody at the moment requested by law, but even if somebody talked about suicide in there, we would not intervene with the AI, unlike in, say, our survey process, where there is a way to reach out to people anonymously. But in the AI, we would never kind of interfere. So that's just what we do.
Brilliant.
I think you're right that there ought to be, and I don't know actually, that Dan might know, I'm just putting him on the spot as being the AI kind of expert, whether there are any guidelines or things that have been drawn up yet about how things should be done.
Yeah,
that question there.
To be honest, I always, when I'm working with a school, I always use the get out of jail free card of you need to take it back to the person in your organization who deals with your data protection and your IT team, because and I say that to get out of a difficult question, but also I think it's the right answer, because they're in charge for that organization of that side of things. So I will give some insight into some, because I've worked with some IT teams and some data protection officers, and I'll give some insight into how we got round certain things, or how we put an education piece together so that something that wasn't necessarily GDPR compliant could be used in a way that was beneficial but also safe for the organization. But I won't recommend it, because I'll say, right, you've got to go back, you've got to talk to the professionals in your organization, and do it that way, really.
Yeah, brilliant. Loads of comments. Some of them too big to actually see all four of us, which is a problem that I've never had, which is great. But I think that's Kevin speaking to someone else in the chat there. Lewis, I've got a question that I want to put to you, actually. It was this one from Selena. Is there a danger of teachers pulling information from a limited number of potentially unreliable sources, such as The Guardian? Because you work on, say, lesson planning, how do you pull the right information to make sure that, it's not biased, essentially?
Yeah, no, it's really fair. I think that so the way that we work in an organization is that the way that Genie works is that it creates content. And to do that, it's basically got 4 genies behind it for moderational purposes. So one of those genies is the policing genie, making sure the language is appropriate. So everything's been vetted consistently. So we've got 4, which is the student through to the teacher, the moderator, then back to the student again to make sure that the language is appropriate for that level of learner, and also making sure that information is being translated. Now, the information we pull through is similar to the levels of like ChatGPT, but it's not being aggregated from every outsource of the web. It's using the right kind of material. So I think the way that we do it is that we have a moderation behind it. And I think if you have companies that make sure they can prove that they're moderating that information and that information being vetted, I mean, the other part of it for us is that when we create courses or when we create content, before it's published to the end user, let's say that's a staff member if it's for training, or if it's a student for direct one-to-one personalized learning, it's actually fully editable. So it's making sure that, I think that's where we're coming from. Teachers shouldn't be pulling full information and just teaching that to the student. I don't think that's right. I think it should be 80% of it's created, proofread, edited where they see fit, and then it's delivered. But I think this kind of, if we're talking about teachers pulling information, I think that's when we start talking about eliminating the teacher as such. It's got to be more a case of how is that information pulled together, vetted, and then taught. And I think the conversation we keep harking back to is the fact that AI is it gets you 80% of the job done. It streamlines your day-to-day service. It's alleviating that time. It's making sure that you have more time to focus on that that student in the one-to-one, focus on the playground, or focus on other things like making a cup of coffee and getting a cat like cake and that kind of stuff, because I think that's where the burnout comes from. So on that note, I think it is a case of using AI tools that are trusted and making sure they've got a moderation service behind them, and then also making sure you're not using it as your final output as well.
I think
just to add another sorry, go on, Dan. Go for it.
No, I was just sorry. I was just to build on that. I think that teachers are so used to that. If you use a website, a YouTube video, whatever resources you use, you read through it, you make sure it's appropriate for your students, and it's no different here really. You have to look through it. You're getting a resource from somewhere that where you don't know the origins of, so you just check through it. I think it's just making sure that we're vigilant with that.
Exactly, and all we're doing is just making sure we make that available on a larger scale. So it's just how much more time can we kind of save, and how best can you utilize that. So yeah, it's great.
I just say, I think, just to say that I think the real advantage of this is the speed. So the thing that where you were going to all the different places, and now something's doing all that point for you, so it doesn't take it. So I know this is an education example, and perhaps but if you think about sending emails out as a company to your customers and others, and creating a whole sequence of them, something that used to take me probably agonizingly time to find and weeks of doing it, I can ask an AI to create a whole sequence of emails and it'll deliver it in 5 minutes. And as you said, I will then need to spend 20% of the time I used to spend to make sure I tidy it up and I get the language right. But the time saving is phenomenal. So my suggestion to people is to look at what you do and the things that take the big time in yours. Think about that end-to-end process and just think about which bits could you plug in to whatever kind of tools are there, and give it a go to effectively cut out the middle time. But you can't stop the thinking at the front end, i.e. this is what I'm trying to do and I've got to get the prompts right. And you can't stop the thing at the back end, which is now, is this good enough? And are the sources correct? But you can cut out a huge amount in the middle and save an enormous amount of time.
Yeah, I think I named one of the... Sorry, Matt.
Sorry, am I just all right to close up this this question just quickly with Selena, because we've got a few others. But Selena, if you're referring to maybe using something like ChatGPT, you can ask it to list the sources on there, and the reliability scale of that as well, as far as I'm aware. So again, like Mark says, prompting it. Sorry, on to you, Dan.
No, yeah, I was just going to say, I think I named one of the chapters in the book, outsource the doing, not the thinking. And I think it just kind of sums up what Mark's saying there in terms of getting it to do the legwork, but you remain in the thinker in that situation. I think is vitally important, especially if we're going to use that content with students.
Yeah, great. Simon there, absolutely. Buy-in is key. And we all know that education is a space where strong opinions for and against, and that's why we have governors and trustees and chairs to make sure that we're making the best informed choice possible at leadership level. I know that a lot of our members, we're trying to be more of the modern association, so more a for movement towards AI, but also trying to list those kind of concerns and challenges as well, hence the session today. And then another one here, just from LinkedIn user. Yeah, we can't ignore it. We've gone well beyond the stage of if. Definitely. I remember having a chat with Dan a few months ago on how crazy it's been even since January, I believe, and it just popped out of nowhere, it felt like, for the majority of people. Things like ChatGPT, for example. And I believe we had another one. Oh, someone asking, Dan, you've written a book. Yeah, easy plug. How much are you paying Nicola? Dan, you've written a book. Realistically, when do you think this book will be out of date? That's a really good question, actually. Yeah.
Why didn't you ask Mark that question? Why are you asking me that question?
It's never out of date, Dan.
Well, it was designed to last, essentially. So a lot of the frameworks and the kind of advice in there is about what does a school look like? What does a leader look like? What does a teacher do in this new AI era? Now, obviously, we can't predict everything, and in fact, talking to the publisher, we are probably going to do an update, not next year, but the year after. But mainly that's because we did a few of the chapters were very practical in terms of the apps you can use out there, and there'll be more of them and continue to be more of them. So that bit will need updated. But we have digital versions of them as well, which we update. So yeah, I think it's still very much valid, and it will continue to be over the next couple of years.
Great, brilliant. Right, let's mix it up a little bit. So looking at a leadership day-to-day level, because that's where a lot of the value seems to be coming from, at a leadership level, saving on those everyday tasks. We're going to go around and we're just going to list one thing each that you know that a trust leader or a school leader has maybe used to just speed up something. So I'll start. I have an advisory board meeting tomorrow. I know what I want to have on the agenda, but I asked an AI tool to lay it out into a formal meeting agenda, something that might have taken me, I don't know, 20 minutes to format. So that's mine. Dan?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I've got loads of examples, but is it specifically just for teachers, was it, Matt?
No, I'd say more leadership, actually.
Leaders,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of different scenarios you could use it for. I think in that kind of camp of using it to do the doing and not the thinking, I think kind of a lot of the stuff you might use now. I'm really careful when I'm really conscious when I say stuff like this, but the kind of work that a PA might do, and that's not to say that you need to replace your PA, but it might lighten the load on the PA for them to be a bit more creative in other areas. So things like writing letters, agendas, like you said. I think writing like self-improvement plans are big things that leaders need to do. Also, what do you call it? The head teachers report back to governors, things like that. I think it'll handle stuff like that really well. But actually, I think you can use them in a way where you kind of let the guardrails off a bit and get it to be creative. There was a recent study out of a university in America that said that ChatGPT was actually more creative than a group of human beings. So if you're just using it to kind of to bounce ideas off and get it to ideate and create some new ideas, yeah, I think give that a go as well. I think you'd be surprised. I mean, it might come out with 100 suggestions and one of them might be good, but if you can get one that then you can then use, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. Hopefully Dan hasn't taken all your ideas. Lewis, you're up next. Give us an example.
No, I've got lucky. I'm before Mark, so I can do this one dry. No, so I think it's that utilization framework. You know, if there's, I think the key one that I've experienced, at least working with a teacher who said we need an ad hoc content creation for the latest health and safety regulations in line with the whole building surveying stuff that's going on. And we created a course inside minutes, and that was just, they've got the guidelines done, moving on, you know. So I think we probably saved about 4 or 5 hours, give or take, worth of work for whoever they were going to refer that to. So that was something where senior leadership could create it, then could send it through to the rest of their schools and the trust, and you're done there. So you can move on and carry on creating more information. And I think that's what it is, you know. It's just like AI is just a source of knowledge, really, you know, and we just have to utilize that in the right way, but just streamlining everything. And I think that was the prime example that kind of jumped at me. But I don't know, Mark, have you got anything left in the?
No, I'm going to just build on your thoughts, because I think certainly it is around content creation, but summarizing things, so capturing meeting content and getting to summarize action points, you know, the things. I always think, you know, if you think about £10, £100, £1,000 jobs, you know, for instance, and say, well, you know, as a senior leader, you need to be doing the £1,000 jobs, you know, any of the £10 jobs, you just need to delegate out. And here's someone you can, or something you can delegate it to that isn't going to cost you any or a lot of money. So in terms of doing that, building on the point about creativity, you're right. I often will get it to say, now can you rewrite that, adding some humor? Can you rewrite that in the style of? So although this is me being wishful thinking, because I haven't got a live example of that, but I would have thought, you know, one of the challenges that I think schools have is in good regular communication to their people, whether that's about well-being or engagement. So actually thinking about and getting this to plan a kind of in advance, a raft of communications, and adopting the style for the mood or the method or the various other bits. So I think those are probably the really quick wins, you know, those heavy jobs where you're spending a lot of time that take a lot of thinking and heavy writing, just get the AI to do it for you, you know, and you just finish it off. And learn to write good prompts. That's the other thing. The only thing I'd add about leadership on this and adopting it isn't just a matter of buying in. I think the other thing is there needs to be some structure around it for me. In other words, you need to bring people with you. So creating somewhere that's a training environment, asking people what AI they're thinking of using, creating some shared discussions, giving people not permission because you want to do it, but making sure people aren't frightened of trying things is all part of the leader's role. So it isn't just simply buying in. They've got to proactively take action and steps to create an environment where people will use it and will share what's working, so it doesn't become, you know, we've got 100 people here all using different bits of AI and nobody's talking to each other about the bits that are really working, which I think is a concern happen in the short term.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Mark, and Lewis as well. You led on to Mark, so you're doing my job for me, which I love. But Kevin just put a quick comment there, again, around personal development plans. I think Dan mentioned that. So yes, absolutely using AI to support coaching. You can even put in answers or forms that maybe you've had back from someone that you're mentoring and get them to assess it on the tool. So yeah, really good uses there. Another one is Mark spoke about their communication with your people, but also parents. You know, let's unfortunately rewind back maybe 3 years ago or however long it was. But when COVID hit, things were having to get updated very quickly. So it might have been around reporting symptoms of COVID. That could have been a half an hour task for an assistant or your admin person in your school or your head teacher. And that could have been potentially 5 minutes. So that's a difference. But as Lewis has highlighted, and I think all of us have highlighted actually, go through, proof it, edit it, just like you would with anything that yourself would work on. I'm just going to put this question to Dan, just a really quick answer on this, Dan. Do you know anywhere that's showing this, how any places?
I think I know Ian, and Ian's doing a really good job of doing some of this himself with he does roundtables around the world, getting educators together to share their ideas and overcome the pain points. So I think Ian, you're doing a really amazing job of this yourself. But in terms of I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I don't know if JISC are doing something. JISC tend to pull together case studies. So I'm sure they'll have some case studies. But in terms of what's going on right now, I think Twitter, LinkedIn is actually really good. I know we're going out live to LinkedIn now. LinkedIn for educators who are sharing ideas is just fantastic. There's also I've just realized I've got a Facebook group where this happens as well. So we've just gone over 20. We've gone over 27,000 members. So we've got a huge community of teachers from around the world sharing resources, sharing ideas, concerns. So if you're on Facebook, if you just type in the AI classroom, you'll find the page and you can join it. So yeah, there's lots of spaces.
We'll be looking to publish some parts on it as well as matter, some case studies on how AI is being used. It is one of our 5 key pillars, so it's high up on our priority. Lewis, I don't know if you were about to add something there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to say, as an organisation who is very conscious of the way that we're using AI and AI for social good, we're actually releasing a paper on this now. And we're actually also going to be doing the roundtable to discuss exactly this on November the 2nd. That's a bit of a plug, but it's just because that is a case that we're genuinely aware of and we're conscious of. So this is all stuff that we're producing right now. And yeah, if you kind of keep up with what we're going to produce and put out there, we're working with UCL to do so at the moment. So yeah, we're very conscious of that.
Yeah, and just a little bit of feedback to your comment there, Jennifer. Really good question. I've asked this before of trust leaders around the ethical guidelines. This is really the responsibility of a trust. So as Dan said earlier, whether that's around the data security side of things, that should be whoever is responsible for your GDPR. If it's to do with safeguarding, that should be the responsibility of your trust safeguarding lead. So really, Jennifer, it should come from the trust or the head teacher of the school or a local authority on what they want you to do or do not do with AI in your school. Or that's what I've heard from trust leaders anyway, on how they're using it. AI widgets will come and go, but do you think that Microsoft... I'm not too clued up on this. I don't know whether this is to the knowledge of anyone else, but yeah.
No, go on, you, Lewis. I think I've spoken more than you.
It's all right. I wasn't getting the timer out. I think that within that field, probably, I think it's fair to say, with the manpower they've got, I think that's probably where they sit. But that doesn't discriminate the rest of the individuals do something different with AI. But I do think that, you know, these two are, you know, they're the conglomerates, and you can't knock that. So I think they are front and center, and probably most trusted for namesake. But I don't think we should neglect anyone else that's trying to do something.
Brilliant. Last comment there, Dan?
Yeah, I think it'll be... I think people don't tend to use just one platform, do they? They'll use a myriad of different platforms. In schools, tend to use Microsoft or Google as their kind of main platform for uploading work, and the Office suite within it. I think it'll just become a part of everything we have. So I think most technological tools, the Internet of Things, the devices we have in our houses, within our schools, will just have it baked in eventually. So if we're using Google Docs, it'll be in there. If we're using Microsoft Teams, it'll be in there. If we're using schools will then use kind of a myriad of other third-party tools around their main platform that plug into their platform. It'll be baked into them as well. So I think we'll see it across the board within every tool. And that excites me really. I think it has a real opportunity to boost what we do and augment what we do. At the minute, I'm not overly excited about what Microsoft and Google are doing, although I think Google especially are being very cautious with what they release. And if you look at kind of some of the tools they've already baked in, Google Duet, not amazing yet, not amazing. You can do miles more with a tool like Canva. But I think they're setting the stage. I think Google are setting the stage, and then when they release their more powerful models, then things could get really interesting. So I think, I'm not sure I've answered the question, but it'll be...
just add my little bit as a non-just AI expert, but I think the opportunity of innovation is so great here that actually there are people we haven't seen coming yet. And you know, the analogy I'd give is, do you remember? Well, I'm old enough, not all of you are, but those of you old enough back in the 70s with the massive mobile phones that you used to carry, you know, and what have you. You know, in many ways, I think that's where AI is now. And if you compare that to the iPhone 15, and that took 50 years. But I think we're going to go from the big Motorola handsets to the iPhone 15 in like 5 years or 3 years. I think the pace. So I think we're all talking about AI now, but I think we're only just starting. And I think the pace and particularly the quality of things, you know, from, you know, we use avatars on video. Everybody knows they're AI. We highlight them as an AI. They're good enough. But already we can see emotion coming into voice. As I suspect within the next 6 to 12 months, I'll be able to create an avatar of me that you won't be able to pretty much knows.
You won't be here anymore. You'll be just on this as the AI person.
Instead of it taking me a week to do 5 videos and get a green screen out and kind of do the thing, I can just the level of so hopefully it won't replace me. It'll just mean I can be much more effective getting my message out much more. And it's exactly the same for lesson planning, teaching. If you can imagine all these different tools at your fingertips that allow you to do what you do now in a fraction of the time. But as we've said, although you can't abdicate it though for the finished product. I think whatever you get to, it's always going to need your collaboration with it. So I'm just excited. I think clearly Google and Microsoft have got a competitive advantage because of where they're in. But and probably the biggest thing to an innovator is if they do really well, they'll probably get bought by one of them. So in the end, so you might end up with them, but hopefully you'll get a lot more innovation coming from outside and much more quickly.
Definitely. Well, that probably brings us to the end. This has absolutely flown by. I've just seen the time, and this was meant to go on until past, but plenty of comments, plenty of questions, which is really good. Just before we do finish up, I know that you three are always really keen to help out anyone who wants to have that chat anyway. Dan, where can people reach you?
The AIeducator.io, which is just at the bottom of my window there. But also watch this space, because I know myself, Matt, and Primary Goal are about to announce something in the next couple of days, which will really help Matt and schools in a big way, in a really big way. So watch this space, follow us, and we'll get that information to you very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Lewis? Yeah, of course. Always really interested to talk about this. So yeah, I can be reached at lewis.griffiths@meganexus.com. Lots of S's in there for a man with a lisp. Alternatively, also, we can be found on the Matter website there. We're sponsored in the AI division. So you can research our product called Genie if you're interested in that at all. But yeah, really enjoyed speaking with you all. Amazing. Thank you, Lewis. Mark, last but not least.
So you get me at welby.co.uk, Mark Solomons, SOLOMONS, at welby.co.uk, obviously on LinkedIn. The one thing I have failed at today, there were a couple of US questions earlier, and I've got a very good, short but quite a good guide from ICE in the US, written with a number of those associations about how they're recommending AI. But although I connected my comment to the comment, I tried to post it twice and it failed. It failed to do my comment. So I'll send that to maybe you, Matt. And if you're sending something out, you can add it to the conversation to those who are interested in what's happening in the US K-12.
Yeah, of course, or whoever asks those questions as well, just because we're trying to stay more on the UK market, even though it's such an international thing. I'm sure there's, many things that we can learn from international markets. So,
and they're just as fearful, by the way, because we do a little bit of work in the US now. We've got a few customers out there, and actually there's quite a lot of parallels. It's extraordinarily quite the same in terms of adoption, I would suggest, with quite a polarized approach.
Great. All right, perfect. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I hope you all found that very useful. You may see all of our faces again on a similar topic, or some issues or challenges or opportunities at that given time. So thank you very much for attending, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.